Welcome, Bellumnoxis Prime listeners. Legion, you march with me once more into the storm of history. Here, the battlefield is not written in ink, but in fire, steel, and the cries of warriors who knew no retreat. Tonight's chronicle is not borrowed from scroll or scripture. It is an original tale, forged in the furnace of our imagination, yet told with the same weight as any battle carved into stone. Stand tall, soldiers, and let your spirit be clad in armor, for what you hear is not a story, but a summons. Subscribe and join the Legion, for the night of battle has begun. The land groaned beneath the weight of war, before a blade was even drawn. An endless plain stretched outward, cracked and dry, as though the earth itself had been drained of blood too many times before. Black clouds, swollen with storm, rolled above the horizon, their bellies split by veins of lightning that crawled across the heavens like the marks of some celestial whip. The air carried no bird song, no whisper of life, only the deep, shuddering breath of wind, dragging dust across the corpses of forgotten armies. Once proud fortresses now lay shattered in the distance, their walls crumbling, their towers leaning like gravestones, each stone blackened by fire. The bones of siege engines jutted from the soil, wood rotted, iron twisted, silent monuments to the wars that had come before. Closer still, the field bore scars, fresh and raw. Trenches clawed into the ground by desperate hands, barricades of scorched timber, and banners ripped and half buried in the dirt, their colors smeared into ash. It was not simply a battlefield. It was a graveyard of empires, a place where the earth itself seemed to thirst for more blood. The sky darkened further, and the storm began to descend, as if summoned by the memory of the countless dead. Each gust of wind carried the sound of distant voices, mournful and harsh, like 1,000 warriors whispering their last breaths in unison. The very atmosphere trembled with anticipation, as though the battle yet to come had already been promised by the gods. And at the heart of this silence, one figure stood, a commander, eyes glowing ember red beneath a scarred helm, cloak torn and thrashing in the storm. His greatsword rested in the soil, as though the blade itself was a stake driven into the veins of the earth, daring the storm to come closer. The ground quivered, the wind screamed, and all knew war would soon be upon them. The silence did not last. From beyond the veil of storm and dust, the first tremors came, low and steady, like the beating of a war drum beneath the earth. The plain itself began to quiver under the march of countless feet. From the horizon, they emerged, an army vast enough to choke the wind, their formation stretching from one edge of the storm's curtain to the other. Their banners clawed at the heavens, each one bearing symbols of dominion. Wolves, suns, broken crowns, each carried by warriors whose armor gleamed faintly even beneath the storm's shadow. They moved with one voice, one rhythm, as though every soldier had long since abandoned the notion of self. They were a single beast, marching forward on thousands of legs, driven by hunger for conquest. At their front rode their vanguard, cavalry clad in dark steel, spears raised, hooves pounding the earth, until the dust rose high and mingled with the storm above. Their war cries were carried on the wind, broken and guttural, yet sharp enough to cut through the air like blades. Behind them came the infantry, shields interlocked, spears jutting outward, their boots thundering as one. But this was no mere host. It was a tide, a wall of iron and will. Siege towers rolled forward upon wheels, blackened by tar and flame, their frames reinforced with steel, their heights already threatening to scrape the underbelly of the storm. Ballistae creaked, their sinew-drawn arms pulled back, ready to cast death long before sword met sword. Our side watched in silence from the trenches and barricades, each warrior's breath visible in the cold, storm-thick air. Fingers tightened upon spear shafts, knuckles whitened against shield grips. The weight of the coming clash pressed upon every chest like a millstone, yet no one faltered. The Legion did not bend beneath fear. At the center of our line, the commander raised his hand, gauntleted fingers slick with rain and ash. The gesture rippled through the ranks like fire through dry grass. Shields were lifted, spears braced, swords unsheathed with a sound that split the storm itself. The moment had come where anticipation could no longer hide behind silence. The storm cracked above, a vein of lightning clawing open the sky, illuminating both armies for the first time. Thousands of eyes met across the gulf, glowing embers from helms, cold steel from visors, fear and fury intermingling. The enemy roared, the ground shook, and with the crash of war horns that seemed to split the heavens, the advance began. The first impact was thunder itself. Cavalry collided against the barricades with a force that split wood and bone alike. Horses shrieked, riders thrust their spears down like falling stars, but our shields held, iron against iron, will against will. The sound was not one of battle, but of a world cracking in half. From the trenches rose our warriors, their cloaks soaked with storm, their armor glowing faintly where ember sigils pulsed through the cracks of steel. With cries that carried the weight of centuries, they surged upward, spears stabbing skyward into riders that toppled like broken towers. The storm above answered, lightning struck a siege tower, flame pouring down its frame, screaming silhouettes falling with it into the abyss of mud and blood below. The infantry lines met like colliding tides. Shields smashed against shields, blades thrust through the smallest gaps, and the air became a suffocating cloud of sweat, ash, and iron dust. Every heartbeat was a clash, every breath was a scream. Our line bent but did not break. Their wall of iron cracked but did not fall. The storm itself seemed caught in the balance, thunder rolling as if uncertain which side to crown in fire. Then came the roar of engines. Ballistae loosed their bolts, massive spears tearing through air with shrieks like banshees. They pierced through barricades, hurled men into the air like rag dolls, shattered shields into splinters. But even as their weapons tore us down, our own answered. Catapults launched stones wreathed in pitch fire, each one a comet falling from the heavens. They struck their siege towers, crushing wood and flesh alike beneath explosions of flame and ruin. In the center of the fray, the commander himself waded forward. His greatsword blazed faintly with the glow of molten cracks, each swing carving arcs of fire through the storm-choked air. Every strike broke shields, every thrust cut through two at once, every roar drowned out the storm above. Around him, the Legion pressed tighter, emboldened by the sight of their champion. The enemy, unwilling to yield, unleashed their hidden ranks. From behind their line came monstrous chariots, wheels jagged and spiked, pulled by steeds whose eyes gleamed white in the lightning. They tore into our flank, blades mounted on their wheels, shredding through flesh and armor. For a moment, the line wavered. Chaos threatened to break the order we had fought so hard to hold. But the commander did not falter. With a cry that echoed like an oath sworn to the gods themselves, he drove forward. Great sword shattering the yoke of the lead chariot, sending it careening into its own ranks. The crash of iron against iron became an avalanche, folding their flank inward upon itself. The battlefield burned brighter with each passing breath. Lightning split the heavens, fire lit the soil, steel clashed in endless rhythm. Men screamed, empires crumbled, the very earth cracked beneath the weight of so much fury. And still, neither side bent. The storm had become the war, and the war had become the storm. When the storm at last began to fade, it revealed a land unrecognizable. The plain was no longer Earth. It was a sea of broken steel and shattered flesh, a graveyard where banners smoldered as black rags, and the bones of towers jutted skyward like the fingers of the dead. The ground itself bled, rivers of mud and crimson mixing, carrying the echoes of war into trenches that would never be filled. The cries of battle had dwindled into groans, whispers, and silence. The storm above, once a roaring titan, now drifted with the weariness of a beast that had spent its fury. Lightning still traced the heavens, but softly, as if mourning the thousands it had illuminated in their last breaths. Our legion stood, battered, bloodied but unbroken, shields cracked, cloaks torn, armor bent, but their eyes burned still, embers beneath helms that no storm could extinguish. Where once had stood an army of conquest, only fragments remained, scattered riders fleeing into the dark, siege towers collapsed and smoldering, their mighty tide reduced to wreckage strewn across the earth. At the center, the commander raised his greatsword high. Its molten cracks pulsed one final time, glowing against the ashes of battle. The silence that followed was not emptiness, it was reverence. For in that silence, the dead were counted, the living were bound tighter, and the earth itself seemed to kneel. This was no mere clash of steel. It was the breaking of chains, the forging of legacy, the promise that so long as the Legion stood, no storm of man or god would ever bend them. The battlefield had become scripture, and every scar carved into the soil was a verse that would outlive the flesh of kings. And so the chronicle closes, the storm spent, the enemy scattered, the Legion unbowed. The clash is ended, but the war is not. Subscribe, comment your oath, and share this chronicle so the Legion grows stronger. The storm of battle awaits us again.